all of our panelists tonight to turn their videos back on and join us. Great. So we're going to get started here. We're excited for week 4 of our 2020 speaker series. So thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Casey. I'm the Director of Operations and Development here at Bike and Build. And if you're unfamiliar with Bike and Build, you can usually find us every summer as we run cross-country cycling trips for young adults that benefit affordable housing and empower young adults to become civically engaged. Unfortunately, we couldn't do any of that this year as a global pandemic hit. But we're excited to continue our mission through a couple different programs this summer, which one of them is the speaker series. So our chosen cause of affordable housing is complex. It's an issue deeply intertwined with education, racial equity, public health, government lending, transportation, fair wages, and so much more. So through this series, we're hoping to dive into the nuances of the entire cause, hearing from a diverse group of people, all working towards the common goal of fair, decent, and affordable housing for all. So this weekend, we're really excited to welcome this panel of folks who all work at various Habitat for Humanity chapters or affiliates around the country to hear how they are addressing affordable housing in very different parts of the United States with very different populations and different things they have to deal with. So tonight we'll be hearing from Allie Nelson from East Bay Silicon Valley Habitat, Bob Werner from Dakota Tipis, Nick Staron from Habitat of Teton County, and John Habat from Greater Cleveland Habitat. So we're going to hear from all of them for about 30 minutes. We've got a bunch of questions to run through, and then we'll also have time for questions and answers at the end. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box. We'd like to make this as interactive as we can. So feel free to use the Q&A box for questions and we will ask them, as well as use the chat box for any comments, thoughts that anyone has throughout the whole thing. We also have the opportunity to turn your mic on if you really want to be vocal and raise your hand. We can unmute you and you can ask a question in person. So without further ado, to get this started, I'm going to ask everyone, all of these panelists, to introduce themselves, just give a short introduction to themselves and their affiliate. Allie, if you want to kick us off, that would be great.
Sure thing. Thanks, Casey. My name is Allie Nelson. I am currently a corporate engagement coordinator at Habitat for Humanity East Bay Silicon Valley. I started with Habitat back in 2011 as an AmeriCorps member and construction crew leader. And then since then, I've worked at a number of different affiliates in a number of different both construction and development roles. And yeah, Habitat for Humanity East Bay Silicon Valley is the east side of the Bay Area in Northern California. So we have a lot going on, a very large service area and a lot of different communities that we're working with.
Okay.
Yeah, take it away, John.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, take it away.
I'm John Habat with the Greater Cleveland Habitat for Humanity. That's based in Cuyahoga County, about 1.2 million people. And the area, the metro area, is probably about 3 million.
And I'm Nick Staron. I'm the volunteer coordinator for Jackson, Wyoming. We are close to the Tetons in Yellowstone, but only 1.5% of our area is actually buildable. So we're here to try to make a difference in this very beautiful place.
And Bob, what about you?
So I live in Wyoming, but I volunteer with the Dakota Tipis Habitat in South Dakota. It's on the Crow Creek Indian Reservation, which is right in the middle of the state, right along the Missouri River. And it's really all native people. There are a few white inholdings, but basically the reservation is only native people. And I want to say that I'm not a native person. I'm a white guy. But I'm in charge of volunteers and I write grant proposals for them.
Great. So now that we know a little bit about where each of you are coming from, we wanted to do kind of an intro to Habitat. So a lot of people familiar with Bike and Build, all of our alumni, have a lot of experience with Habitat for Humanity. We were kind of modeled on the Habitat relationship with an affiliate, and our teams have spent thousands and thousands of hours over the last 18 years volunteering with habitats across the country. But for anyone who is on this webinar or listening who doesn't have an in-depth knowledge about Habitat, Allie's going to give a quick little rundown about what Habitat for Humanity is and what different affiliates do.
Sure. So Habitat for Humanity is, I think, yeah, like a lot of people have heard about it. It's a global organization. And our mission is to bring people together to build homes, community, and hope. So we operate in all 50 states, and I think nearly 70 countries around the world, all under that same mission. And I think two of the biggest things to know about Habitat is the fact that we are a affordable home ownership program. So I think is one of the few kind of programs set up that way. But our homeowners take on, when it's all said and done, they take on affordable mortgages through Habitat and our lending partners. So we're very much a hands-up program, not a handout program. I think you might have heard that before when you've heard about Habitat. And then the other thing is, and this is how, you know, we're linked with Bike and Build, is we are a very largely volunteer-based organization. A lot of the homes that we build are built by volunteers, including those future homeowners who have put in what we call sweat equity into their homes. And there's just the volunteer aspect of it is just such a large part of what keeps our costs down, keeps the communities engaged, helps to make people feel empowered, whether that's the volunteers themselves or the homeowners who are taking on the mortgages and buying the houses. So it's just, yeah, very important. Volunteers are very important to what we do. And then I think Casey alluded to this a little bit, but so I think another great thing about Habitat is there are affiliates all over the country who operate totally independently. Habitat International is our parent organization, and they kind of keep an eye on everyone and have certain guidelines and work a lot with our international organizations, but each individual affiliate operates kind of completely on their own, which I think is super cool. Kind of a quick.
If I may add something to that, because it's so timely, our roots go back to 1942 in Georgia with the establishment of a farm where interracial and economic equality, inclusion was paramount. And that has now developed, as Alex said, into all states. But racial inclusion was so important to our founders. And basically in an urban area, which I am in, 95% of the families we serve are minorities. And in this day and the climate's going on, I think we have something to celebrate and to make people, make sure people understand that this is who we are. It's not just about affordable housing, it's about inclusivity.
Definitely. So now that we have kind of this basic idea of the Habitat model, I'd love to hear from each of you a little bit about some of those unique challenges that you face in your communities. Obviously, Allie in the San Francisco Bay Area will probably have very different challenges than Bob on some native land. So I'd just love to have the opportunity for you guys to share a little bit about what are the unique things that your affiliate has to deal with, and how do you face some of those challenges in affordable housing in your communities?
Do you want to call people in order of the list so that
That's a great idea.
Okay.
Do you want to take it away first, John?
Okay, I'm last on the list, but the last shall be first, right?
That's the rule.
You know, our challenge is affordability. And I mean, it's sort of the, you know, that's to a magnified extent out in Silicon Valley and places like New York, and probably in Jackson also. But still producing a house that's affordable is a very big challenge, and we wrestle with that all the time. In Cleveland here, 6 years ago, we decided to not build any new houses and sort of take advantage of the foreclosure crisis that swept America. In fact, the epicenter was here in Cleveland. So we were able to find an abundant amount of old homes or abandoned homes that could be easily rehabbed. That's no longer true. The low-hanging fruit was picked. And it costs us now upwards of $100,000 or more to rehab a house. Now, compare that, though, to building a new house, $200,000, okay? And a house that in the inner city will never appraise for that. So basically, we eat about $80,000 on every house we build. Another challenge we have, and my guess is other habitats face this as well, is how do you serve the smallest families? Because we serve families of 1 and we serve families of 8 to 10. So how do you serve them equitably? How can you develop a product that's appropriate to the size of the smallest families as compared to the larger families? Last year we did 24 houses. This year we'll probably do 20 because we're building 10 new houses. But you know, raising money is always a challenge for us. And in fact, my job is beggar. I'm out, my knees are worn out. And but you know, I'm never ashamed to beg for habitat because the purpose, our mission is so meaningful. So thank you.
Nick, do you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Staron. So I live in Jackson, Wyoming, which is surrounded by Yellowstone, Grand Teton National Park, and all these beautiful things. It's the size of Rhode Island, our county. However, only 1.5% of that can actually be built on. And it turns out that this is a great tax haven for the uber wealthy. So they have been coming here in droves since the 1980s, 90s. And so they've been snatching up land and making it impossible for regular people to live here. So something like 40% of the homes in Teton County are empty all but 2 weeks out of the year, which means that we have a lot of empty houses, mansions sitting around with nobody living in them. And it turns out that 40% of our workforce has nowhere to live or can't afford to live here. To get put in perspective, I have a good job, as do my roommates, and I've had as many as 5 people living in a 2-bedroom house, just the upper floor of a house, to try to make it feasible to live here. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's something that we are thankfully a part of helping. Our county has recognized that we need about 1,000 homes to be built, and we are nowhere near that, but we are eager. If any of them are watching, we'll take it on. We'll find a way to make it happen. And that's what I'm excited about working with Habitat for, is that we're part of the solution. We have also, although we have largely a white population, we do have a large Latino population that is actually kind of hard to pin down because a lot of them don't fill out the census information, but some estimates have said it's about 40%, 40 or 30% of our population. And it's over half of what we serve at Habitat. And we're absolutely delighted to have that amount of diversity in there too. So it's weird because in our town too, they're kind of, even though they're a rather large population, kind of a silent, slightly minority of people here. So part of Habitat is also giving them a voice, giving them a place to live, giving them a safe spot to be. And we've seen with COVID, as so many of you have, that many of us had no place to shelter in place, or no place safe to shelter in place, like me with my many roommates, and many of the folks that we work with here have no place to live, but 40% of our homes are empty. So we also need a fundraising. Our current homes, we have a 24-unit project that we're very proud of that's going on right in the heart of town where people can walk or take the bus to work, which is exciting. Those houses cost $225,000 to our homeowners, which is still a lot of money, but compared to Jackson prices, our average house is $1.2 million. And that's just unattainable for even people with really, really good jobs. There's just no way to get there. So we're excited that Habitat's here. We're excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to be a part of it. Just been a part of it for a year, and we're making a difference. And Bake and Build has been a big help whenever they show up, and we miss them dearly this year. And we hope they can come back and help us out next year.
Great. Allie?
Sure. I think one of the most unique things about Habitat for Humanity East Bay, Silicon Valley is really just like where we are. And it's probably true of a lot of affiliates, but we're 3 Bay Area counties, so we're a huge landmass. And within that, we have the 2 urban areas of both Oakland and San Jose, which is the San Jose being the 3rd largest city in the state of California, as well as, rural areas, suburbs, and as our name indicates, Silicon Valley. So with that, we have just, quite a disparity between, we get a lot from Silicon Valley in terms of innovation, but we also, it adds to the wealth and housing disparities. So I think one thing we do really well in order to kind of deal with where we are and who we're serving is just to have a variety of programs. So we serve individuals and families across this continuum of housing, all the way from supportive and transitional housing to affordable housing, and then through our counseling program up getting people into market rate housing if that's what they need help to do. So we do build new homes. We do that super densely because that's how we can afford to do so. So we do lots of townhome and condo style homes. Like I said, we're one of a handful of affiliates that have a HUD certified housing counseling program, which helps a lot of families get ready to buy a Habitat house. It also helps a lot of families with whatever financial kind of issues they have. It's very prevalent right now as a lot of people are seeing facing lots of different hardships due to the economic downturn, so that we have counselors in place who are able to help people with kind of whatever they need. We also have a very robust home preservation program. So we have a lot of housing stock with older or disabled residents, and just helping them maintain their homes so they can stay in them safely and continue to be homeowners and continue to invest in their communities. And then one of the things we started doing about a year ago is we were working with the city of San Jose on some really cool projects dealing with transitional and supportive housing for some of the homeless, the people experiencing homelessness in that city. So right now we are working on our second community called Bridge Housing Community, and what it is it's basically a community of about 40 cabins where people experiencing homelessness are able to stay for 3, 6, 9 months, kind of whatever they need. There's full case managers on site to help them out and make that transition. And it's called Bridge Housing Communities because it alludes to the fact that they're there for a short amount of time as they bridge that gap into more stable, affordable housing. And that's what the caseworkers are there to kind of help them with and make that transition. So I think with there being so many different issues going on in all the different places we serve, we definitely have kind of developed lots of different ways to hear our communities and answer them in the best ways we can through a variety of different programs. And I think that's kind of what we need out here.
And Bob. Oh, Bob, you're muted. There
Okay,
you
can you hear me now? Okay, so the Crow Creek Indian Reservation in South Dakota is mostly in a county called Buffalo County, and Buffalo County has the lowest median family income of 3,000 counties in the USA. So it's poverty, that's pretty extreme. And most of the housing was built by Housing and Urban Development in the 1960s. It's really beat up. A lot of people live in the houses. We don't build new houses because we can't afford to, because we don't have enough volunteers and we don't have enough money. So we, 2 years ago, moved to repairing houses instead. And so last year we did, I think, maybe 18 repairs to houses. And they're repairs of just, absolutely anything, leaking roofs, bathroom floors that are mushy, and kitchens that need complete rehab. Just everything about most of these houses is really shabby and really needs to, be rehabbed. What else can I say? We're isolated. It's one of the reasons for poverty. The nearest town is 30 miles away. There aren't any jobs to speak of on the res. It's said that 80% of employment is with the tribe. And by the way, we have a really nice volunteer center. And I want to clarify that when I say we, I mean Habitat, because I'm not a native person. But we need volunteers. in a bad way. And we do have a really nice volunteer center. So if you're willing to brave the winds of the Dakotas and some mighty long hills on your way to Jackson Hole, then please do come and visit us.
Great. So yeah, wow, those are all such really different habitat models. I think, John, thinking about what I know of habitat and the ones that I think we see on Bike and Build most often, the ones like John described in Cleveland of either rehabbing or new homes are kind of what I think a lot of people think of as habitat. And Allie describing sort of transitional and supportive housing, that's something we often don't associate with habitat. And so it's really interesting to hear that totally different sort of realm kind of working in that community. And then from Bob and Nick having very specific and unique situations to work with. Thank you all for sharing that. So moving on, we know we're all living in these unprecedented times. Some of you have touched on this, but COVID-19 has impacted communities across the country in so many ways and continues to do so. We've seen that it is reaching every part of the globe in rural places, in urban hotspots, and has really exacerbated the affordable housing crisis that was already peaking in a lot of ways, and will likely continue to make that a major threat for a lot of people for years to come. So can each of you talk a little bit about how COVID has kind of impacted both your affiliate in your operations? I know some of y'all mentioned you might not be able to build or be changing your schedule in that way. And also how it's kind of impacted your community specifically. I know in a lot of cities, people are calling for rent strikes. There's a lot of different things going on with eviction moratoriums. Yeah, just sort of anything you would like to share that can give us an insight into how this is impacting your affiliate. And let's start with John again.
Well, thank you. Well, we closed our operations for 10 weeks and the restore, and all the employees were furloughed. We had built a gap funding program for the employees who were furloughed, but as it turns out, they didn't need it because of the extra $600. In fact, a lot of employees were making more furloughed than they were at Habitat when on the payroll. But we continued our construction on a skeleton crew with subcontractors. You know, when we were told to shelter in place, you know, that wasn't healthy for a lot of our families. When you have rodent infestations, you have lead, you have leaky roofs, spongy bathroom floors, as the other guy said, that's not a good option. People don't want to stay at home. They want to get out of the home. We anticipate that we'll not be able to do 100% of what we thought we would. We'll probably be down to about 75%. Our funding is off too. Early on in the process, we encouraged our donors to support frontline essential services. Now you can say Habitat is a frontline essential service, and it is, but when you compare it to masks and gowns and personal protective equipment, you know, we could take a back seat. And so we did that. We encouraged our donors to support those kind of efforts. But our philanthropy is down about 25% also. Our restore is doing better than ever. People were so anxious to come out and buy anything. So we're doing very well there, but we lost 10 weeks. We lost about $500,000 in revenues through our restore. So it's going to be a challenging time. And it's always challenging when it comes to fundraising. But, you know, this is a faith-based business. And while I'm not a guy who wears my faith on my arm, I have other tattoos, but not one of those. The money shows up when it's really needed. I've been here for almost 10 years, and I'm surprised every time a large donation comes in. It's like, where did that come from? What's going on here? So we've always been able to make do because our work resonates with so many people. So yes, we've had impacts, but I'm very confident we'll move on. However, we're looking at a housing project. You know, Alex said about the townhouses and stuff. We're able to buy existing townhouses very cheaply. for our smallest families. So we're going to economize and figure out how that works best for our smallest families and save a lot of money in the process. So this COVID crisis has caused us to re-examine our models and say, how can we do affordable housing more cheaply? So that's a good thing. Thank you.
All right, Nick.
Hey, everybody. So just to reemphasize with our housing crisis here, to paint a picture, I used to work for a little First Baptist church here in town, and we were helping a lady who lived with her daughter in a basement with 11 other people in the basement. So it's a total of 13 people living in the basement, and she paid $800 a month for a tiny little room and the studs didn't even have drywall on them. They just put plastic sheeting over the studs. And this is in the wealthiest community in America. So it's easy to feel like it doesn't happen here. But imagine that lady and her daughter trying to shelter in place. You can't, just like John said, like you can't control other people, and they have to go get whatever work they can. We were very fortunate too, where we were able to keep our employees on. But we are seeing a huge cutback on our income, and our restore is currently also running behind too, because although people are bringing stuff in, most people aren't buying high ticket items right now, expensive things like that we really need, like localized inequality at its finest. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, actually, Jackson is also the greatest wage income in the world, or in the United States. So the difference between our wealthiest and our poorest is larger than in any other place. So we may be the wealthiest community in America, but there's also people like myself on that other side, and people who are definitely far worse off than I am here too. So COVID has affected us, and we've lost a lot of our volunteers, but mercifully, our construction crew, 3 of them live together, and the 4th of the construction crew is basically an introvert. So he just only hangs out with those people. So we're very fortunate that they can keep working, and we've just started letting volunteers back on, but we're experiencing some difficulty in getting them to be safe with not touching tools and using the cleaners and masks and stuff, and also have been struggling with prices going up a lot because it's a mountain town too. That has been a little tricky for us too. So just something else we're navigating.
Thank you. Allie.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that's happened here at Habitat East Bay Silicon Valley is so throughout California, housing has been deemed an essential service, or back, when COVID started, it was. So we've continued to build, and that's been a struggle in itself to make sure that our sites are safe for our volunteers. Haven't been out there, obviously, so we've had to do it without, one of our greatest resources. But our staff's been out there. We have 19 homes closing at the end of the month, so end of the fiscal year as well. So there was no stopping. We had to get those done, and as an essential service, we felt we were able to put the safety measures in place to do so, and to reach the ultimate goal of getting those 19 families into a safe place where they can continue to weather this storm. Yeah, like everyone else, we've obviously some tough economic times. We've had to rethink a lot of the way we do our fundraising. It's been a lot. We do a lot of that based on getting people out to site, larger events, which have become virtual. Lots of different, innovative things, lots of webinars people have been watching to figure out different ways to do things. And then I think one of the largest things that we're really proud to be a part of is that transitional housing that we've been working on. The city of San Jose really ramped that up in light of COVID, in an attempt to help mitigate the spread of disease and get as many people experiencing homelessness into somewhere they can shelter in place, somewhere they can shelter by themselves. So we're currently working with them on 3 different sites to get some of the most vulnerable populations into temporary housing, transitional housing, where for their own benefit, for the housing benefit in the long term, for their health benefit, and then just for the benefits of their communities as well. So a lot of trying to do a lot of business as usual, but lots of different roadblocks along the way.
Great. And Bob.
So COVID-19 was a little late getting to the reservation because of its isolation, but it did get there. And about month ago, the tribal council issued well, I can't think of what it's called, a resolution that they don't want any volunteers there this summer. There are only two areas to volunteer there. It's a church and it's us. But according to the tribal resolution, they don't want any volunteers there, this year at all. Two of the neighboring reservations closed their state highways to keep coronavirus out of their reservations. And that was a big issue between the state governments and tribal governments. That's a real kind of rat's nest because tribal governments are partly sovereign, but they're also governed by sometimes state rules and certainly by federal rules. It's all really complex. But anyway, COVID shut us down for the year. Our volunteers who couldn't come this year are planning to come next year, and so we're hoping for a good bounce back.
Great. So yeah, kind of along those lines, we've heard about what your affiliates do sort of in normal times, and then how you guys are all adapting to the world we're living in right now. But I'm curious about how your affiliate fits into the larger affordable housing landscape in your community. I'm assuming there's other housing organizations, or at least I know there are other housing organizations in places like the San Francisco Bay Area, but I really don't know what else is out there in Jackson or on reservation land. So can each of you talk a little bit about sort of the role that your specific affiliate plays in that greater landscape, and or if you're kind of like the only one in town who's working for affordable housing?
By the way, that applies to almost every habitat, rural or urban. We're the only ones providing affordable home ownership the day one. We're the only ones, but let the other guys speak first.
All right, we'll go to Nick.
Okay, so Jackson is unique. We have three organizations, one that's run by the town and the county, and well, actually both of them are run by the town and county now. They're kind of attached together. But the weird, we reach people who make from 0 to 80% of the income that you're supposed to make. They claim that we're supposed to make $70,000 a year per person, so $140,000 per household when both individuals are working. But our average income here is $40,000. So there's a gap in the numbers that are used by the town and county to calculate how much we're supposed to make and how high and houses that are there. So Habitat fills from that 0 to 80, and then they fill from 80 on to like, I think it's 120% or 150% of that income gap. But the weird thing is that people like myself don't qualify for a Habitat house and don't qualify for the town and county houses. We're in these dead zones between each of the categories where we can't afford to live anywhere. So we're very grateful that they help us out by giving us land. Sometimes the land that we're currently building on was originally owned by the town and county, and they turned it over to Habitat to build. So there is some partnership there, but I think until we start sharing our statistics and working off of the same numbers, we can't really fill all of those interesting gaps. So we're glad something's being done, but we're also really falling short of working together.
Bob.
So housing efforts on the reservation, there are really only two efforts there. One is the tribe, but the tribe is broke and the tribe doesn't build any new houses. And then there's us. And like I say, there's a church and they volunteer by repairing homes too, but wow, I can't hardly think of a new house on the reservation at all. We just have to content ourselves with trying to do a sort of a Band-Aid job on these houses and, keep the water flowing and keep the lights on and stuff. It's kind of a dire situation. Well, it is a dire situation. I don't know how to finish that sentence. Yeah.
Let me say that, and Allie probably will add a lot to what I'm going about, but I'm going to get on a soapbox here. When I said Habitat is the only affordable home ownership program day one, there are other programs out there called affordable rental. Now, the government tax subsidies that go into government affordable rental programs in here, which is a lower cost compared to some of you guys, $270,000 total subsidy. They will never own their home. We are lucky to get $40,000 subsidy for a $200,000 house. You know, government policy is really skewed towards that affordable rental program, which in the long run does nothing to empower families and help them get into the middle class. So Allie, what is your experience with affordable rentals out in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so I think so. We actually, our affiliate, our CEO has a big presence in advocacy, and there's a huge. It's Habitat California, which is the group of Habitat affiliates here, do a lot of promoting just for. I think we're the state of California is at such a shortage of housing in general that we advocate for housing to be built, kind of all housing. And then obviously a large portion of that is affordable, but when you have, you know, renters in houses that would usually be family owned, it just pushes everyone down a rung. So the biggest thing we do is just promote that we need more housing in general. I think the homeownership aspect of it is a huge part of that. And I think it's like Nick was saying, there's this huge missing middle here where there's just people who make pretty decent salaries that just can't afford to live here and can't afford to buy, will never buy a home. And it's trying to address some of those concerns. And then, you know, through our counseling, it's just like I tried to explained before, it's just like this whole spectrum of things. There's no one right answer. There's just everything that's possible needs to be done. And I think, yeah, there are so many organizations in the Bay Area. Like we are one of 2 Habitat affiliates serving San Francisco and its its surrounding cities. So it just goes to show how much work needs to be done and how many people we need advocating for it. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and as big as it's of affiliate as we are still just a really small piece of that.
Great. So we have a question from one of our attendees. How do you locally advocate for change to landscape of affordable housing in your community? And how are you working to change the rules, regulations, and practices that created these disparities and perpetuated them? If anyone has a...
Yeah, I've got something on that. You know, the federal government has what they call the HOME program, which is affordable housing. 90% of that ends up into affordable rental. 10% ends up in affordable home ownership. Now, it is, again, skewed towards the affordable rent. There's a lot of money to be made building affordable rental projects because it's 100% is government subsidies guaranteed. Our city finds it easier to work with people who are developers who are building very dense housing, like 50, 100 units. That's one contract. Well, every one of my houses is a contract for the city. And it takes not exactly the same amount of work, but a lot of work. So the city actually empowers those developers at the cost of affordable home ownership because it's just easier at the end of the day. And the city, if you're in an urban city, you know, it's dysfunctional government administration, okay? And you can talk to any large city. It's the worst part of your job is working with municipal government. And to get them to realize a bigger picture, in the long run, you're helping your residents more through ownership than through rental. That's an ongoing battle we wage.
Well, and I'm originally from Cleveland. I can echo that too, that there's also a lot of corruption in Cleveland, has been historically. So you guys have a big struggle on your hands
Not with
too.
Habitat. Not with Habitat.
No, not with Habitat, but I mean like the government. Yeah, just to clarify, but with the government officials, there have been some busts. We struggle with kind of a different thing, and we do advocate, we do push for as much as we can get. But the weird thing we struggle with is that the rich people really own this town, and we depend on them to help us fund our houses. So this is a tricky thing. Like, I'm even afraid to say this on this video because we rely on super wealthy people, the wealthiest 1%, to help fund us, but they're also the problem here in Jackson. So that's kind of the thing we struggle with how much can we advocate for, because what we really need is a state income tax. It would actually help people in the long run. And as weird as that is, you might lose some on your income tax, but you would probably, your home prices would drop drastically. But how do you take away, how do you lower the home values of the uber wealthy so that the regular people can live there? So we're caught because they kind of have us up against a wall. We need them, and without them we don't exist, and with them we also can't live here. So it's tricky. We try the best we can, but it's a very fine line.
Allie or Bob, do you have any comments on that question about local advocacy?
Allie, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if I had too much more to add than what we've already said. I think it's just a lot advocating on the state level, getting our voices heard in Sacramento, and then just like really getting to work on, identifying the problems and trying to address those the best we can. By serving some of our homeless population, we're able to keep, get them into affordable housing and try to mitigate that part of it. By serving people through counseling, we're trying to get ahead of things. So just the diversity in our programs, I think, is what we really use to get people on the path to homeownership.
Our situation is rather different, I think, because when treaties were made with Native Americans, they were made between Native Americans and the federal government, not states or counties. And so basically the treaties usually said, okay, you Indians, give us your land and we'll give you housing and clothing and food and money. And so the relationship with the tribe is a relationship to the federal government, not to the state. There are some efforts within South Dakota to improve housing that are mostly made by foundations. But the crux of the housing problem on the reservation really is a relationship between the federal government and the tribe. And the tribes are underfunded, and isn't there for housing, and so it kind of is the same from year to year.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of those really interesting dynamics. So just want to remind everyone, we have a couple more minutes for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we will address them. We did get one question from Skip, who is a alumni and friend of Bike and Build and one of our board members, and a real lover of the Dropkick Murphys band, and has asked, has anyone seen the Dropkick Murphys fundraiser where they streamed a show and one of the beneficiaries was Habitat in Boston? The event made $700,000 and was really unique. What are some of the unique fundraisers that each of your affiliates are doing either during COVID or planned in the near future to kind of help your affiliate keep going?
Well, we do an annual walk, and the founder of that walk turns 100 this year. So we can't do a walk, but we're doing a virtual walk. But we promise every participant a real, not virtual t-shirt.
Yeah, that's kind of something similar. What we're doing is there's an app where charities can sign up to set their own boundaries of what people can do. And for ours, you have to meet a certain number of steps or bike ride miles or kayak miles, and your phone will track it, and then people fundraise. So it's kind of like doing a big fun run, but everybody's doing whatever they want to on their own. And we're actually going to launch that next Monday. So we'll see how that goes.
I want to note that when the Cavs won their series and became the champions, we benefited with an $875,000 donation, because at the away games, people bought tickets to go and sit and watch in the stadiums and stuff. And they gave us all of the proceeds from those tickets. It's, again, we're faith-based, and that was a real shot in an arm that gave us real fiscal stability. And you just never know when something like that's going to drop in your lap.
I think kind of similarly, and definitely have the right crowd available here, but very much same. We have a bike ride that we do every fall that we are unfortunately obviously not able to do in person this year. So it will be a virtual kind of do it yourself kind of event. So I don't know. We've had a good crowd of bike and builders the last few years, so we'd love to have more again this year. But yeah, it's called Cycle of Hope. It's usually a one-day bike ride around the beautiful Bay Area, but we are transitioning that into a fully virtual event and allowing people, or like encouraging people to do it in their neighborhood and still try and fundraise and kind of get some of the fun community-based aspects that we've had in that event as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that is a kind of do-it-yourself ride this year. But we also had we had a build scheduled every spring for our women's leadership build, which we did virtually as well. And people virtually built a house, and it was on the computer, and there were tours and interviews, and just trying to show people, we're trying to finish these houses by the end of June. So just showing the would-be participants the progress on that and kind of take them along for the ride, even though they weren't able to be out on the big day that we usually have. So also pretty successful.
So our habitat has 5 sources of income. We get some mortgage money from the handful of houses that we did build. We do an annual fundraiser, an internet thing. We get some grant money, and we get some other donations. And then the last one, and my favorite, is there's a nun who runs bingo at the Catholic Church every Sunday night, and she reports it every month, and we get income from that too.
Wow, that's fantastic. I guess everyone has new fundraising ideas now. We'll all be starting bingo. Great. We have one more question. Do any of your chapters collaborate with other chapters, whether it's nearby or regional, for sharing ideas or initiatives or any programs? And along with that, how independently do chapters or affiliates tend to operate?
We are totally independent legally, but I collaborate with other chapters. When I first got to my habitat, I didn't have time to collaborate. It was just putting out multiple fires occurring at the same time. But it's important to collaborate. You got to make time to collaborate with your peers because you're not alone, and there's a lot of great ideas out there. If you don't reach out, you're never going to tap that rich pot of ideas.
Yeah,
And for this,
oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say here in the Bay Area, that's something we have a sister affiliate across the Bay, and I think it's really important that we do collaborate because from the, from our standpoint, we have Habitat East Bay, Silicon Valley, and Habitat Greater San Francisco, but from everyone else's standpoint, we just have Habitat. So it's important that we're on the same page and giving the same message. And I think that's a real big push actually from Habitat International these days is just to come out as one unified habitat. I think so it's just kind of an outward facing thing that it's necessary and it's important that we know what everyone's doing and kind of stay on the same page with our messaging. There's also obviously a lot of affiliates work with tithe money to affiliates internationally. So there's a lot of collaboration, unfortunately not this year, but lots of collaboration and volunteering all over the world. So lots of ideas spread, lots of things learned, people build in such different ways, and it's really cool to see that as well. So there's a lot, it's such a large organization, but there's so much information to flow around it. It's pretty great.
On a follow up on you, Allie, we're sponsoring 50 homes in Zambia, but 50 homes in Zambia cost $250,000. So it's easy. But we not only do homes in Zambia, but we also do fresh water and good sanitation, which the water is so important. So not only do we improve our local community, but we're part of this world community helping everyone.
And for those of you who don't know about Habitat too, there's a lot of Habitat conferences that go on throughout the year. that we can attend. I went to one in October of this last year for Women Build out in Georgia. And then we also use Yammer to talk back and forth to each other too. Our closest affiliate is pretty far away. Probably the closest will be 2 hours, but we don't talk to them as much as the one from 6 hours away because we're in the middle of Wyoming. You know, it's kind of hard to get anywhere. But we do communicate over Yammer and email. And once you make those contacts, you can email back and forth, which is invaluable.
I would say the habitats in South Dakota are sort of fragmented. They're also far away. The nearest habitats to us are about 200 miles away. And there are habitats that are in the cities that I think are pretty fully functioning. But the overall South Dakota state organization of habitats has had some problems, and they're kind of trying to get back on our feet. There should be more collaboration. I totally agree with that. It isn't kind of happening right now. I guess it needs, some more effort and some more energy.
Great. Well, that was the last question we had from Bike and Build and from the Q&A box. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you for participating tonight and spending your time with us. It was really great to hear about all of these different affiliates under one umbrella that we hear so much about, especially in the Bike and Build world, and how you are all addressing an issue that we all care for in a lot of different ways, and trying to help people that live in very different places with different circumstances all achieve the same thing.
Well, and thank you for Bike and Build. You bring a lot of energy and awareness and focus, and we appreciate that.
Great. So the last thing we have to say is just a reminder, we love feedback. We are going to be sending out a survey to everyone who participated as an attendee for this, and it'll have some more information, links, and we'd love your input on how to make this speaker series better. We still have another 5 or 6 sessions going on throughout the rest of the summer. And if you've enjoyed anything you have learned here tonight and feel inspired to donate to Bike and Build or any of the affiliates that have been sharing tonight, Eric is popping all of their donation links into the chat box, and we'll also share that information through the survey and email tomorrow. So thank you again for coming. Thanks to everyone for listening, and hope everyone has a great night.
Namaste.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.